Hey everyone, welcome to another typology interview. We have Tony. How's it going?
Good. Hey guys, thanks for having me, Benjamin.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So I already know your type because I know some of your twin types, and they were excited that they got a new twin type. So I guess welcome to their family, or you, whatever, however it works. Yeah,
Yeah, I wasn't expecting finding twin ties, especially since I thought I was an INTP. I was like, I
right.
consume sleep. There's like
Okay,
no
that's
one
interesting.
else.
Yeah, we'll get into that. That's really interesting. But do you want to start with your personal SI experience on typology? How you got into it? Your story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess very beginning, like I took the type MBTI test a few times in high school and college. Um, I took it a few times, but there's one recorded Facebook post where I typed as ISTJ when I'm really INTP. I mean ENTP. So obviously it's accurate.
Right.
Eventually I started typing more as INTP. But then I didn't really like how there was no real logic in the system. It was more like you just read descriptions and that's it. But
Yeah.
then one time I had this work events where they typed you and you got to talk to other people of your type. So I talked to these two other guys as INTPs. I was like, "Do you guys do this?" Like, "Yeah, we do this." I'm like, "Oh shoot." Um,
Cool.
Also, my boss typed that INTJ, and I didn't like some things that my boss did. I was like, "Oh, is that why?" I guess the controlling aspect of it.
Right. But who knows? He might not have even been, he
Yeah,
might have even been INTP. You don't have no idea.
yeah, but
And your buddies that were INTP might even be ENTPs. Who knows?
exactly. So
Yeah.
I thought I was an INTP for a while, and then I met this girl who said she was an INFP, and then we hit it off like really quickly. And I was like, "Wait,
Hmm.
why you're a feeler?" Like I just do feeler versus thinker back then. So it was like,
Right.
why can a thinker talk to a feeler? It makes no sense. But eventually I looked at the functions and I was like, oh, we both have NE. That's why we can talk to
Mm.
each other. And then um, that was around February of last year when I started looking into functions. And around October of last year, I found Dave's channel. And then initially I just thought that it was like an additional layer on top of the normal functions that he was just like, I thought animals were function pairs and that was all to it. And I was like, I already think in function pairs. So what
Right.
value does that add? But then eventually I was like, oh shoot. The one that hit me was single decider versus single observer. But although I got that wrong, my type. So who knows
Yeah. That's
how that really
interesting.
works. Yeah.
Right. Um, that's really cool. So I saw the masculine sensory there. In you were in October, and like you were being very specific about the dates, like specific as you could. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very hard on the sensory. Um, do you want to tell me a little bit about that coin then? Because that's an interesting coin to take apart. Because you saw yourself as a decider. So do you want to tell me why you saw yourself as a decider?
Yeah. So like now in like hindsight 2020, it's like, oh yeah, I do process people like myself and others pretty easily. And that was the explanation that like Dave and Shan gave me. Like you're
Right.
talking about yourself and others and you're just like do it really easily. I'm like, oh. Because in general, I feel like I can get along with people, like friends, like coworkers, hasn't been too many problems. I guess with my family, it's hard to get along with them. But part of me thinks it's also the controlling aspect of a family. Like
Mm,
you're forced to be with these family members versus friends you can choose. There's more freedom. So I think that if I'm in a certain relationship where I feel too constrained and I don't like certain aspects of it, that's where like my double deciding gets a little weird. But yeah, most of my
mhm.
friends know me as like a pretty decent friend, but like I don't like to talk about my family too much. Even though like I don't really think it's actually that bad compared to other people. So like there's like
Right.
different layers. So
Yeah. So it's more because of your people issues with your family, I guess, that you saw
yeah,
yourself as a decider. Yeah.
yeah,
And like you felt stuck on that, or you
yeah.
do feel stuck on that still.
Yeah, that's a problem that like I don't really know how it's something that's not as easily solvable. I always feel like the things are easier to solve than people because like
Mm,
you can who cares if you mess with your diet, whatever. That doesn't no one that doesn't affect anyone. But a human being is like this random thing of chaos. I know I'm like a chaos monkey, but it's like, oh, I don't want that sort of chaos.
wow, that's interesting. So okay, so how are people chaos?
I always related to like how well, especially since I'm Saber TI, of how like you shouldn't add emotions to like logic and stuff, or else logic doesn't like work out. Um, so just like I want to do things, and like there's a logical way to do it, and then someone's like doing something because of non-logical reasons, and it's like, but you should do the logic. And it's like, ugh. And then
Hmm.
With things you can like make it consistent. Like if I'm writing a program on a computer, sure, the program might give me like crap if I write it wrong, but it's like generally pretty consistent how I do it. If I make a diet routine, if I do a sleep schedule, a lot of things are pretty consistent. With a person, like I don't really know what the person's gonna do, and everyone has like different stages in their lives. So like maybe I'm chummy with you today, but then a year from now you go through some super OP growth, and then it's like, oh, you're a different person, and that changes. So um, also, I don't really always like relying on people too. I guess that's also masculine TI. But it's like it's easier just to work on yourself. Like working on yourself is like the easy or like it's obvious to me. Like pushing on myself versus pushing on others. So it's like, yeah, I'll push on myself. Therefore, but sometimes it's sort of an excuse to not deal with others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. You talked about how other people are chaos because you can't predict them, but like okay, so that sounds a lot like like you're trying to predict things all the time. Do you feel like that? Like you're always trying to predict what's going to happen?
Yeah. So I try to predict what people do all the time. Um, but even though I can predict it, it's more like I should predict this to handle my people problems. But
Mm-hmm.
it still seems like an unstable thing at like if I have this machine that needs a battery, the people are not a sustainable battery, even though I can adjust and model people. But like me putting effort in myself and working on my things is something that's sustainable that can run the battery.
Okay, yeah, that was an interesting analogy. Do you want to give us context for that analogy? How it matches, just so we get the
uh
context. I know
I,
context is sensory in this case. You have to give a sensory
yeah.
example.
I guess one example is like I guess the DE way of doing things is like they need validation cookies. So let's say someone can't do anything unless like my roommate just bought a bunch of Christmas decorations, or my roommate I think he was like Savior FE, and then he's always like cooking food and he's like tell me that it's good. I'm like what? Why am I being forced to like tell you it's like you see that needy energy that my masculine TI is like just weirded out by. But like
Right.
he like needs people to feel like his decisions a certain way, and that just seems weird. It's like, why would you ever like make a decision, like make your life based on what other people think and stuff? Like all that
Mhm.
external validation, that just seems like weird to me. So like that's just a non-sustainable system.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so I do see the people thing there as well, like and the distaste for the external validation. That's interesting. Um, okay, let's get into that. Any do things surprise you? Like so you're always trying to predict what's happening. Does every so often something surprise you? You didn't see something coming, like a curveball, something out of left field.
Yeah, sometimes though
Mhm.
I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Is it a pleasant or unpleasant when something surprises you, when something unexpected happens?
So I guess no matter what, it's usually like, oh shoot, that happened. I was like, and then I quickly figure out why it happened. I'm like, oh, I guess
Mm,
that's why. And then I'm just depending on the situation, I'm usually kind of calm about. I'm like, oh, I see how that broke. Like, okay, we just have to fix it. So I go into like
right.
problem solving mode really quickly. Um, like certain things, I guess in interactions, like I'm talking to a friend, and generally I'll just have strategies in social situations. I'll like play a lot. And then so people know me as someone who's not too forceful. I'll just play a lot. And then if someone really needs me, then I'll be like, oh, they mentioned something like, oh shoot, there's something really deep going on with this person. They want me to listen to them, and I'll just like adjust based on that. But I wouldn't necessarily know that they needed me at that moment. Or I guess at work sometimes, like I'll be focusing on like an assignment. Like I'm a software developer. So I work focus on my assignment, and then I think I'm doing okay. And then someone just mentions, hey, we need you to like do this other thing. I was like, oh shit, I didn't even know that was a priority. Like I always listen for little tidbits, like in our meetings every morning where we have our scrum and initial statuses. I'm like, oh, I always pay attention to what people say. So I'm like, oh, that's on the radar. So therefore, I'm not surprised later on. Every now and then, I'm like, oh, that was more important because oh,
Mhm.
I don't always ask questions to people.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about that priority that you're talking about. You like to have priorities when you're working, like you to know what's more important than what, or what?
I like to know that what I'm doing is like I guess quote unquote appropriate. Just like it's something that it's okay that I'm doing. I guess for a software developer specifically, I'm always thinking about what I'm expected to do. Like I can have my any chaos like all the way, as long as like for a software developer, I get my ticket done. I communicate when I need to. If I run into a blocker, I had to like do that. Don't spend like 2 or 3 weeks on an issue that you could have solved in a day. Like just I try to prevent those things. But
Mhm.
also like for work, I have a hard time like caring what the actual work is sometimes. I'm usually, for me, it's all about like growth and just solving interesting problems. Sometimes like the actual, like, in today's world, there's like AI and all that stuff that's fancy and exciting. For me, I'm like, I don't really care if it's just some really boring website or something, as long as like the actual work I get is exciting. And then therefore
Right.
sometimes I don't like ask for the priority of like, oh, this is important because that's like, oh, I didn't even know that was important. But okay, you guys care about it. You guys value it.
Right.
I'll just do that.
So I picked up a little bit of a demon state when you said boring. Like there's a lot of distaste in your voice when you say, "Oh, that's boring," like with a heavy B. So tell me a little bit about that. Why is that such a thing?
um it's I guess I always think about like it's probably my demon SI, definitely. But I always see my life as problems that you have to solve, and obviously I abstract it a lot. So at work, I think about all the problems that people typically have when they work. Some of them are like some of them the people problems. Some of them could be like some people want to be more creative and just not do a lot of, I guess, SI work in this case. I guess SI work, the obvious ones like spreadsheets. Like some people love spreadsheets, some people don't. For me, I like I chose software development because you get several hours just to think, solve creativity, and like sometimes you're not actually doing that much code, but like the amount of problem solving you're able to bring to the table was like something other people can't do, and therefore like it's super fun for me. And I like to just get lost in my little worlds of thought and problem solve for days and days, and then I'm like relatively good at it, and I get paid well for it. So it's like, oh, that all works out. And then I think for work, a lot of people say, "Oh, life is about like picking your like shit sandwich." So you're not gonna like everything about the job. So I always try to figure out what I want from a job. It's like, okay, I don't really care exactly what I'm working on, as long as like it's fun, interesting, I'm problem solve, and coding tends to bring those opportunities. If I ever went to management, that's where I kind of dread it. I'm like, oh, a lot of managers don't really code, and I have to manage people, and that's more boring. And I have to attend these stupid meetings that just have no value. I'm like, that's so boring.
Well, I gotta say, I'm seeing your any man. That's like a lot of connections at a really fast pace. Like that's overdrive any, whatever that is, double activated or savior or something. Yeah. I don't know about people problems or thing problems, but yeah, that's definitely a lot of any. Um, do you get that sometimes you have to slow down for people with your analogies and with like the way you say things? Do you feel like you lose people when you're talking?
Yeah, and like I always categorize it in different ways. Well, I guess recently I learned I'll sleep last, and I was like, oh, I thought I'll sleep second. So it's
Right.
like, oh no, I was so scared of being an introvert, and then it turns out I'm like kind of extroverted. Although Dave said I'm like extrovert on a swing, so I'll be super introvert, and I can ramp up really easily.
Mm,
But yeah, like ever since I was a kid, I noticed I would say things, and people would be like, what? And I'm like, oh, people don't value whatever I bring to the table for this. Like if it's school or work, it's valued because like I'll get good grades if I'm good at math, or for work, I'll get paid if I'm good at programming. But other than that, like it seems like people don't really value as much. And I thought it was TI initially. People would say, "Dude, you're always overthinking," and that's why I thought I was like a TI dumb. I was like, "Yeah, I'm always overthinking. I'm always thinking of all these scenarios, blah blah blah." Like, and they're like, "Dude, you're making it so complicated." I'm like, "But how can you not think about these things?"
right. So tell me a little bit about that. Like what are you always thinking about? What's always running through your mind? Like uncertainty, possibilities, the future. I don't know, anything. Like, is there a category of what runs through your mind? Is there like some kind of trend that we can think about?
It could be a lot of things. It's generally what just gets me a dopamine rush. Like
Oh, wow.
I especially what NT consume. So NT consume is like, oh, take a lot of abstract ideas that work. It's like that is so abstract. Like that means I can, if I leverage that the right way, I can consume so much stuff and get interested in so many things. Versus like
Mhm.
FI is like, if you don't like it, I don't know what to say to you. Like with TI, it's like if you give me a reason I like it, or if I find my own reason, it could be the stupid little reason, like, oh, this person one time mentioned this thing about hot dogs, therefore I want to know how hot dogs are made now. And it's like, oh, I want to read, I want to watch like an hour of hot dog videos now.
Right.
Um, but I guess a lot of it will be TI driven. Like I think about the scenarios in my life and how what the life I want to live. And I've talked to this of like an SI lead of how like I've NT'd my life so much. Like some people go through the traps of like, paying a lot for college and then getting a job that doesn't really matter. And then like they're looking back like, what happened? I'm just like, isn't it obvious that these systems are bad, but obviously I'm anti-system because SI last. But
Right. Yeah.
I'm just always trying to avoid these pitfalls, and I'll like reflect on interactions, and I'm like, oh, I should do things this way, this way. Like, what's the ideal way of doing things? And
Do you
then
identify with that as like being anti-system, trying to destroy systems or find what's wrong with them and poke at it or something?
kinda, yeah. I'm like okay with so my compromise for that is like I'm okay with systems in certain contexts. Like for jobs, some ENTPs will really hate jobs and like, oh, working for the man, that sucks. I'm just like, no, if I were to have a normal cushy 9 to 5 job, I get paid okay. I can just work those hours and like I already NT'd it, so I'm doing programming. You're not actually working 40 hours. Like a lot of that's just thinking and taking breaks. Because that's how you get your job done.
Well, thinking's part of work, man. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if you have favorite tea, then it's like not as much work for you.
Yeah.
Versus someone else, like I guess an FE dom, it's like, oh my god, TI, I have to do that all day. It's like scary. I'm like, no, I don't have that problem. I'd be scared to deal with people all day. Like I don't want to be like a therapist or like just someone who has to talk to people all day and not do anything like logic, like analytical.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So about I got a little blast on like an ENTP I saw destroying a system. It was I think you'd appreciate it. So there's like the whole thing with the music copyright laws and how like some musician comes up with a tune and then like it gets taken to court because someone already played that tune or someone already copyrighted it, right? Yeah. So this guy, also a programmer, decided I am going to write a program to discover every possible tune and I will put it all on a hard disk. And so he did that and he went and he copyrighted his hard disk. So now he has every possible tune copyrighted on his hard disk, like possible, any possibilities. And now he's like, okay, now I'm going to put this in the public domain. That's it. No one else is getting sued. And that's how like he defeated the system. And I thought that was like, wow, we need ENTPs like this. This is great.
I wouldn't not be tempted to do something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I thought it was pretty impressive. It's not obviously every possible tune, but it's like within the parameters that he designated, which is like most of them.
Yeah, I do love breaking systems. Like I see this what I call like the standard way of doing things. I'm like, okay, that's the obvious way to do it, but what are the better ways?
Right.
And that's not just for the sake of like, oh, I just want like possibilities. It's also like, well, this way sucks in these ways, so I don't want to suck. So I want the benefits by doing this alternative way.
Right. Okay. So I've talked to a lot of NE-DOMs over the past year and a half, 2 years that I've been doing this, and a lot of them have like this love-hate relationship with SI, where it's like they really appreciate the SI because it lets them NE more, and it feels like they're trying to simplify the SI. I don't know. Maybe tell me if you relate to this in a way, like optimize the SI in the best way possible so they don't have to think about it anymore. So that they like it's just autopilot and they can just NE all the time. Do you relate to that in some way?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I tell people I don't like to just blanket SI. Like I watch some SI DOMs make videos, and it's just like they're just like, oh, obviously I'm going to use like a spreadsheet or write this all down in a list. I'm like, no, I do not have all that spare SI. Thank you very much. I can't just throw SI every little thing. But for the problems that I really care about, I don't really mind using SI for. And yeah, one of my goals is like to have enough SI, just pretty much know I should be doing it like every moment in my life. Like everything
Mhm.
can be broken down to like an SI detail, and I'll have like the NT overlay of like, okay, that's why these details matter, and then it just works out. And then I get into trouble when I don't have good habits, when like I'll go sleep too late or I don't eat properly or all these things. Like those are just crucial systems I need to get better at.
Right. So do you feel that as a struggle? Do you feel like that you're working for that and like that's a life thing that you're getting better at over time or something?
Um, I have some good systems in place. Like food wise, I have a pretty good system. Sleep is like kind of iffy. I have been just noticing how much of a crazy person I am because sometimes I'll meditate and I'm like, wait, it seems like the problem is that I'm trying to go something else because I'm bored when I should really just keep going this direction. Or like you kind of pretty much know what to do, dude. Like if you did these 5 things, you would have a good day, but you're just not doing it. I'm like, shoot. Like literally, I
Right.
just have to SI and my life would be better. It's like it's a little anticlimactic to me, but I'm like, okay, I just have to figure out how to get my discipline up and all that.
Right. So okay, tell me a little bit about the systems you've developed. Share with us those systems. What does that even mean?
I'll just see. Hmm. Okay, so I have my food system. I've been like dieting since I was in high school, so it's been a while. But right now for my food system, like I think about, oh, what do people typically eat? Like one thing that's always baffled me, I guess people at SE probably do this more, is like, SE will probably want to try more foods out than SI. It's like, oh, let's try all the possibilities. For me, I'm like, wait, I see how all these things are pretty similar easily. Like all these things have meats, like everything has a meat, carb, and a protein. I mean, meat, carbon, fats. So it's like, okay, you're actually telling me that this meal over here is so special, so different because it's this. I'm like, but it's basically the same thing. I get the same nutrients. I don't value like the SE sort of like experience.
Right.
And I know some people will like go super extravagant on like, oh, let's cook for 2 hours, make this fancy thing that's unhealthy for me, and every other time I'm gonna eat snacks. And I'm like, why can't I just eat well every single meal? Like, why can't I have like a nice cooked meal like that's generally healthy, not processed every single meal? So I have my systems to do that. Like, I have a slow cooker full of like chicken bones, so I'm constantly just cooking potatoes. And it used to take me like an hour to cook potatoes for a few days, but now I just every few days wash them, chop a few, put in the slow cooker, and now all my time is free for that. So I don't have to ever cook the
Wow.
potatoes or store it. And then like for me, like I shop at Aldi because it's like the best deal right now. Like Walmart's okay too, but in general, like people just don't plan properly for the food they need, and like they're not willing to eat the same things over and over again. I'm willing to eat the same thing over and over again, especially if it's healthy. So I'm eating like fish and salmon, like which is like I think higher skill than other people. Like I can afford it a little bit, but like it's not that much more expensive. I eat that like every day. It's like a nice meal that you might get at a fancy restaurant. It's like
Hmm.
it's obvious not presented that, but like I do it every day. I just like it's frozen, I microwave it, and I have this microwave thing. So like I do meal prep for like 20 minutes a day, and I get all my meals, and it's just like I barely spend any time cooking. I eat pretty healthy.
Yeah, really good. So that whole thing that you just talked about, was that boring for you to go through and tell us about your system? Because that's SI, or were you proud of that? Is it like something
I'm
you?
proud of that.
Right, there you go. Yeah, really cool. So it's like peacocking your
Yep.
demons, I guess, in a way.
Yep.
Yeah. So like, do you do that? Do you peacock sometimes? Like, oh yeah, I'm super organized. I'm super this.
Well, the way I do it right now, I'll definitely do. I'm like, oh look, I'm so good at health because I do all these things. Oh look,
Yeah, yeah,
I NT figured out. I figured out the bare minimum SI details to get better than everyone else. And like, yeah, I'll do that quite a bit.
right.
Like, I'll try to balance it because sometimes I showing off is like not socially acceptable sometimes, and sometimes I don't really gain anything from it. So if I can
Yeah.
just keep my own ego in check, I can do things that matter more. Like if someone, I'd rather just talk about what other people talk about sometimes. So but yeah, I will at least mentally peacock and like, oh, I'm so great. I figured out all this stuff. I beat the sensory.
I'm back. I guess the
Okay.
Wi-Fi died. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, yeah. How do you relate to physical reality, your body, comfort, things like this? Like, are you really sensitive to discomfort? Are you like, does that kind of thing scare you? Yeah.
I like to be pretty comfortable. Most of my life is guard like cared for making myself comfortable. Like I'll at home I just wear like V-necks, like this sort of sweater hoodie thing, and like sweatpants. That's my typical sort of thing. When I go out, like it won't necessarily look good, but I'm like it's comfy. Like instead of wearing sweatpants to work one time, I just wore something called joggers, which is like it looks kind of like fancy pants, but it's like stretchable like sweatpants. I was like, oh, cool, that's like perfect. That meets both needs. The physical SE like looks semi-professional and also like it's comfy. Um, I do feel like I have good awareness of how my body feels all the time, so I'll get really annoyed when like I'll just feel bad. Like if I stay on the computer for 3 hours and do something, I'm dehydrated, I haven't gone to the bathroom, I need to stretch, my body aches, like I'll get really annoyed at myself. And then with the masculine sensory, I remember that really well. I'm like, dude, the last time you did this, and I have like double masculine sleep, so it's like, dude, stop doing that. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
As far as like external reality, yeah, I definitely relate to like not noticing things. I'm not like a really good driver. Um,
Mm.
I live in a house that's really decorated a lot because my landlord really likes that, and I'm always like, oh, something changed, and then my like it'll be surprising if I notice.
Okay. Yeah. 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 That's interesting because like SE, even if it's Demon SE, they'll notice everything. Like especially Demon SE will be way more weird about noticing stuff. SI, it feels like, yeah, it feels like it's especially Demon SI. It feels like they don't notice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
Dave once said like I asked like an SI person, what are they actually looking at? And then I don't remember his mom or something, but it's like, yeah, you just see snapshots of little areas of the room. Oh, they're looking at this particular part of the carpet or this part. Yeah, SI is like I feel like a lot better. Just I know I want to look at something here. It's all I need to look at. Every now and then I'll take in some SE, but I don't really care. I can like walk blind.
right.
Essentially, I wouldn't mind.
Uh-huh. Um, yeah, that's interesting. How do you relate to like exercise, or like physical labor, or if you have to carry something heavy or things like this?
So my dad works in construction. So and growing up, he's always like, you're the only boy in the family. You have to be the man. You have to do these things. So whether or not liked it or not, I had some SI implanted into me from that. So like I remember in high school, like when there's construction around schools, sometimes like there'll be doing construction at the like up in a building, and therefore if you do it up in a building, you have risk of things falling down on people. So to get around that, people put like barriers above people's heads. So you walk through like this little tunnel where like there's a
Right.
barrier on top. So my dad would have a lot of the infrastructure to make those things, and those things are really heavy. And then
Uh-huh.
he would like say, "Okay, Tony, you're my laborer. You're gonna help me." And like, so I remember when I was doing that, I pretty much just like had this internal drive of like, I need like this will be useful if I can muster the willpower to be able to exert myself to do these things. They'll be useful later. So
Yeah.
being told to lift something up isn't usually that scary for me. I'm like, okay, I feel like no matter how much muscle I lose, I still have this base amount of strength, and people get surprised. Like, oh, Tony can lift that. I'm like, yeah, you just do it. And I think
Right.
masculine sensor relates to that a little bit because I'm just like,
Yeah.
sure, it's demon, but it's still masculine. It's like I can shove you, I can do this.
Right.
Um,
How hard is it for you to learn a new process or to figure out something new like that? Like, okay, now you've got this new IKEA furniture, or you've got like a new at work when you have to learn how to build those structures or whatever you were doing there. Like, is that something that's difficult for you to get through that SI?
if I had to do it all in one go, yeah. So I have my systems for that. It's like I'll use my NE, I'll consume a bit and be like, okay, this is generally how I think it'll go. And I might put in a few screws together, but like, okay, that's how it goes. I'll take a break, come back, so I don't get over stressed out. Um, yeah, generally I just let it go over like a certain period of time, and then I can get it done. If I'm
Hmm.
expected to do all of it at once, I'll probably get frustrated from some missing information. So I'm
Yeah.
using any to figure out the missing information while I just like chill.
Is it hard for you to follow those steps that they're telling you to do? Or
Oh yeah,
I guess that makes me feel more comfortable even to have steps.
I'm glad that I'm glad that all the information's there. Not too surprising. EP. I'm glad all the information's there. And then but I don't necessarily feel like I have to follow every step. I'll read the steps, I'll think about why those steps are there. And if I think that it's not necessary, I won't do it. I'll just do it my
Hmm.
own way. But if the
Yeah.
information's not there at all and I need that to create the thing, I'm like, why didn't they include this?
Right. That's right. And like once you've figured out a process or something like that, do you ever feel like you want to give it over to someone else? Like, hey, look at this way I've figured this out. Has that ever happened to you?
Happens to me in self growth a lot, where I'll like think about this new idea of like, oh, like this isn't one that's real. But like, I know 4 hour work week is something at the charisma command. That guy's like, oh, 4 hour work week, you should do this thing. And then it's like, yeah. So whenever I think of like concepts, I'll be like, hey, you should go on this diet. You should like do this thing. And then my friends like call me crazy, and then I learn to tone that down. Um, at work is like the only other time I would like talk about these things. But for that, it's like I will get mad if I tell someone the exact steps that I SI narrowed down to need to make the program run to do like what it is, and
Right.
they don't follow it. And I'm like, if you had followed my steps, did all those little safeguards, you would have done
Yeah.
it. And since you didn't do it, I don't know what to tell you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, that slow cooking thing that you have like that. Would you be proud to teach that to somebody? Like, is that something that you would want to give over?
Yeah, but the thing that
Yeah.
I do is that I just gauge interest. So I kind of just, I guess since I have like NDFE double activate, it's like you have to get people to want to like hear what you say. So you can't just if you just blur it out them and blast it, like it's not always gonna go well. So I'm just like, oh yeah, I just randomly did this thing, and then depending on their desires, I can like hook them. Like let's say
Hmm.
someone's really into working out, and I show them I got like 6 pack abs, And they're like, "Ooh, how'd you get that?" I'm like, "Well, not funny that you asked." And I'll go on
Right.
my. But other than that, like if I sense that someone doesn't want to hear it, I'll just be like, it's not a big
Yeah.
deal.
That sounds like a little bit of FE there that you're bringing in, like figuring out how to hook people, how to gauge people's interest. Like you're using FE as like a tool sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you, I want to get into how you use FE as well. But I just kind of want to go a bit deeper on the NESI axis a bit while I got you here. How do you relate to words and people using words differently or things like that?
Oh, I was watching like like one of my type twins mentioned like Chris Voss recently, which is
Okay.
sort of my opposite type. Like he's still same quad,
Right. Same quadra. Yeah.
sexuals, and I think the animals are almost like I think he's like blast, sleep, play, consume, which is
Yeah. Something like that.
almost my opposite because I'm consume, play, blast, sleep, and then yeah, he would talk about like all those little SI details of like, yeah, if you say things this way and this way and this way, you'll get different results. I'm like, I can kind of do that too. And then I've seen some videos where some people are unsure if that's SI or NE. They're like, you're saying the SI little things to do, but like you're using your NE like or FE to understand like how people work. And then so it's like kind of weird. But yeah, I am pretty particular how I write things a lot of the time and how I message people. And sometimes like I've even like read people's messages. Like I had a friend who wasn't really sure how to talk to people at work and wasn't sure if he was coming off well or not. So I read it, and then since I had the exact SI details, like, oh yeah, you're saying it this way, you should say it this way and this way. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
if you think about like what you're trying to achieve, you should like when I tell people things, if you really want to get people to listen to you, the point is to make their lives as easy as possible. Like when I worked in IT, sometimes
Sorry, the distraction here. I just wanted to say I already got his type from his type twins. I kind of knew what he was beforehand, so I didn't actually type him. But yeah, he was typed before he came to me. I kind of knew his type. Sorry, guys. Go ahead. Proceed. Sorry to interrupt.
uh I don't mind the chaos because
Yeah, yeah.
but I was like, I mentioned something about work and I did lose track a little bit.
Do you feel like chaos in your head is what you want? You want a chaotic mind, and but like order around you in the physical world is something that you need?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to get enough order so that I can be chaotic. It really is
Right.
a big like
But
goal
like
for
the
me.
chaos isn't in the world, it's in your mind sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't particularly like deal with physical things in general, so I'm always
Yeah.
trying to like I don't even want to leave the house. Like so, I'll like optimize away buy groceries. I'm like, okay, go every 2 weeks, buy these things. It'll last 2 weeks. If you have this all planned in the SI, you don't have to leave the house
Yeah.
for some random thing. If you don't have SE interest of like, oh, I want to try this sort of food, it's like, yeah, you already have your food for 2 weeks. I've
Yeah.
eliminated all the sensory distractions and additional needs.
Yeah, because like on the opposite axis, I feel the opposite. It's like I don't mind physical mess. I don't mind physical chaos, but like I need that structure in my mind. I need to organize my mind, which is like kind of the opposite way that NE works, which is fascinating. Like your mind works best when there's a whole slew of chaotic ideas.
Yeah, it's fun. I probably like the dopamine sort of argument that Dave and Shannon talk about how like your
Right.
saber punches give you dopamine. Yeah, I think I get dopamine by just all these random ideas.
Really. Yeah. Um, how do you pick an idea out of all those ideas? How do you identify with that?
If I'm having to solve a problem, sometimes it's like it's the thing that's most likely going to lead to the right solution, so I should try it. Other times it's more like it's probably a newness sort of thing. So one thing I've been trying to do is like I'm a developer, so sometimes you're encouraged to learn about new technologies.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes I do the research of like which ones are the best technology to learn. I'm like, oh, so in theory, if I just learn this one, I'll probably have the most likelihood of advancing my career. And then when it gets down to like actually doing tutorials and sticking to that one technology, I get really bored. So then what I like to do instead is like sometimes when I meditate, I'll just think about, oh, just slow down, slow all the chaos. It's like, oh, what do I really want to work on? And one of them today was like Amazon Web Services, which is the sort of like cloud-based. Well, I won't get too into the technical stuff too much, but it's Amazon Web Services one that I was like, all right, let's just write that down and let's enter into it. It's sort of like I like it when my NE just kind of figures out, I was like, that would be kind of interesting to work on. But then when
Right.
SI that's forced, like, yeah, like you should work on this and this and this, and it's the best way. And your SI knows this. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of bored.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like what you're saying is like your NE will find narrow down on a door that opens up to a whole bunch of other doors. Like that's what you're looking for. You're not looking. You're looking for something to open up more possibilities, not something to narrow down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the motivation for getting SI to continue is like you'll get to learn even more and more new
Right.
stuff if you just stick to this topic and read the next page of the tutorial. I'm like,
Right.
ooh.
Because like what you were saying that Amazon thinks seems interesting to you, it seems interesting because of something else, not because of it in itself.
Yeah.
Because it can point to more things.
Yes,
Right.
it can point to more things. It's also like connected to some things I've been curious about. Like at work,
Right.
when you're a software developer, you don't always know how everything's connected. I'm like, okay, I'm in my little hole solving this ticket. Someone wrote this thing for me that I just pressed a few commands and it works. But I'm always like, wait, how does that really work? How did you actually SI set that up? And I'm like, oh, if I learned this tutorial and now I have this understanding and now I can do more things. I'm like, oh, that's so
Mm-hmm.
cool.
So do you feel that like once you get the SI steps of things, it opens up more possibilities as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like you don't like to do that part, but you like the possibilities. So it's like this love-hate sort of thing.
It's sort of love hate. Sometimes like the details is like hard and yeah, I've told myself I wouldn't be a software developer if like I didn't see it as like a way for freedom or like just a cushy life. Like
Mm.
there's a lot. I went through a lot of stress, like just figure out code, get all my configurations working on my computer. Like it's really annoying. But I'm like, okay, if I was doing this as a hobby, I wouldn't have lasted. But since I'm doing it for a job and the job provides me more freedom in the future, then I can do it.
Right. Again, it's like you're looking for that door that's going to open more doors. Like,
Yep.
yeah, as long as it's got that, you're going to go for it.
Yep.
That's interesting. How does your mind settle on something? Like, are you really looking for all those doors and seeing which one can open more? Like, is that really what your mind seems to be doing to make that choice?
I feel like the base animalistic thing is like, oh, every day if you just had no restrictions, you could just do whatever you want. It'd be so much fun. And then as you get more mature, you'll start to realize, oh, actually, no, even though I thought I could do all that, I ended up just wasting 3 hours on video games, which
Mhm.
is not me learning tons of new information. So it's like, oh man, I
Right.
would say yes.
Yes.
Like you just think of a lot of different possibilities. So it's like when I hear people can't see what I can see, I'm just like, oh, really? It's sort of just autopilot. So
So yeah, tell us about that. How someone hasn't seen what you've seen. What does that mean? Like you feel like all other NEs people can all see the same things that you're seeing?
I don't
There's no
necessarily, I don't know if we all see exactly the same thing. Like we'll obviously filter down our own ways, but
right.
sometimes you can just sense when you talk to people that like I'll say some abstract thing that I didn't feel like was abstract, and then I guess some lead sensory people might go like, oh, what's that? What are you talking about? Like they need the
The
direct.
context.
That's what like everything's spelled out, and I'm just like, oh, you don't understand this. That gives me signs of like, if you don't understand that word that I said, then you probably don't understand these other concepts. Therefore, if I bring up these pieces of the conversation, you probably won't like that. Therefore, I should cater to the conversation if I'm using FE well to just do whatever you want to and adjust to you.
Right. What do you feel like the takeaway from a good learning session is? Like, what at the end of the day, what do you want to take something away? New concepts? Is that what you're searching for? You relate to that, or you relate to the concepts pointing to some kind of sensory process,
Uh,
fact, or
Both. Yeah, I do like the idea of just like learning to learn and just learn more things, understand how things work. But then I also know I'll go in circles a lot of the time. Like I'll literally feel like I'm just spinning around, not getting anywhere. And it's where I have to like actually do the SI building. Like let's say I have this dream of becoming a YouTube star. It's like you have to put in the SI work and then make a video and do all that SI work. And then it's like, oh, that's kind of boring. And then you stopped it. And your YouTube dream never made it. And then over
right?
time, when that happens so many times, like, oh, I need to do some SI to actually like do more things. And then, yeah, I think Kendrick mentioned, yeah, sometimes he'll close off doors to open up new ones that way. Like if you're in a relationship, you've closed a certain door, but now you opened up other doors.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how that would play out, but maybe you have an example.
Oh, I don't remember exactly.
Oh, sensory,
He
exactly.
actually explained it during his interview.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was I didn't feel like it was a necessary way to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Like I don't feel like you have to necessarily view like being in a relationship as like a door and bullet. Like I do that in other parts of my life. Where
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm like if you SI limit yourself, I'm only allowed to work on these 10 things, which for any it's like, okay, that might be an acceptable amount of SI. 10 things out of 100 things.
Yeah.
And then you do all those things and you make more progress than
Yeah.
normal.
Do you find that you'd rather dream up things to do than actually do them?
I'm starting to like devalue my NE nowadays, thankfully,
Okay.
where it's like if I spend too much time in abstract land, even I know that there's a limit to how much progress I can make, and I can sense that limit like pretty easily sometimes. So it's like I can understand something at any level, but I won't really understand it until I've SI'd actually did it.
Yeah.
So that's where I get more value in that. But it is really tough to just be in your head. In your head, you don't have the sensory like, oh, that bolt has to fit in that thing, and that thing has to go there, and you have to buy these things and spend money. Versus ideas are just free. It's like, oh, it's just so much easier.
Right. Yeah. Do you find that because of your SI, which you've I don't know, what you've collected over the years, that it actually improves the quality of your any in some way?
Uh, yeah, because when I actually get to do things, I'll live a more fulfilling life. If I live a more fulfilling life, my mental abilities, my relationships, everything will be better, and I'll get to open new
Yeah.
doors, and I'll get to just do more things.
Because like intuition not grounded in the sensory doesn't really have any practical use or doesn't have any, I don't know, it's just all fantasy stuff. So but like once you actually get some SE reality to sort of shape, does it shape your NE in a way, or does it, what does it do?
Um, I guess the way like my Annie is also feminine, so it's like I'm like, oh, you give me a random concept, I'm like, oh, I can kind of see how that would be true. Versus like other people would be like, no, that's completely different, and I'm like, but I can see how they're like the same.
But like, does the SI ground it? Does the SI at least, because like any sometimes might not be actual, like you don't have a jumping point for the any. You don't have something actually solid that you can start growing your concepts from. Do you
Mhm.
feel sometimes that the SI will give you just a starting point where you can start thinking of possibilities?
Um,
Did you resonate with that, or it's just it's more like possibilities? Think of more possibilities, and that's the seed.
I guess it might be both. Like I can do any on any on any on any.
Right.
But I will use SI. Sometimes the SI is limited to just my brain of like I just thought of examples of how like this plays out. Like I can just test my any theories through different SI scenarios, see what would happen. And then when it gets better is when I actually do real SI work and get real SI feedback and see real SI stuff. That's when I feel like my life gets better even after that.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a quality of life thing. Okay. Interesting. So like, do you sometimes not wish you didn't have a body to require a quality of life and you could just be this free mind thinking of ideas and on dopamine all day?
So I've heard of that. I feel like that's
Yeah.
such an NF thing, and I double
Right.
acting at NF, but like
Yeah.
I'm okay having my body.
Yeah.
It does annoy me how humans have these animalistic desires in the SF that
Yes.
annoys
Yeah.
me. But like, your body's just another problem, and you're having a body does have some benefits. So I work
Really
with
cool.
it.
So okay, let's get into that FE before we run out of time. Um, so you were saying a little bit how you can I don't know, entice people to want to hear more. How else do you use your FE? What how else do you see it?
Uh, FE helps to tell me like what to say in certain situations or like what's not okay
What?
to do.
Okay.
Um, So I'll be since especially since it's feminine, I'll be very safe with my FE. It's like, oh, if I ask this person this and this and this, it might make them angry. I think I've heard Chris Wallace say something like that. It's like if
Hmm.
you say like I think someone said like why is why such um a question that people don't like. Because it's like if you just ask the word why, maybe you're judging them. So like whatever words that come out of my mouth will affect my interaction with someone. So I'm like
Hmm.
really careful of like, okay, what are the safest approaches? So sometimes like I
Right.
don't talk to someone, I'll give you a look. And then sometimes if you look back, that means you give me the feedback of like, oh, you want to talk or something. But I didn't pressure you to talk. And
Right.
then ideally what I really want is for people to be like, hey, they'll tell me what they want and I can give it to them. But like people aren't straightforward like that. And people don't always know their motivations. So you have to work with that. It's just another problem.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. There's a bunch I want to ask you about this. Okay. What you said people don't know their motivations. Do you know your motivations?
I tried to distill it down over time. It's weird because like I have sleep last, so you're like, oh, maybe this guy hasn't processed. But like
Hmm.
I tried to distill down my emotions. Like I know I dislike when when what I want is from like external sources sometimes. It's like, oh, do I want this validation? No, I have my own standards.
Interesting that you associate motivation with what you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about intentions? Maybe that's a better word.
Oh,
Are you aware of
I
your own intentions?
generally, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I'll know when I get into sort of haze. Sometimes if I just talk and talk and talk, like I'll get into sort of haze where I'm just kind of autopiloting, and
Right.
like I'm not keeping up with like every little intention that I want. But other times, like I'm pretty aware of like what I want to get out of a conversation. But sometimes it's so abstract of like I just want this interaction to go well in these ways. I want this person to
Back
feel
to the FE.
well. I
Yeah.
want to get a little bit of validation, just see like what I did is good. I want to be able to work on myself. Like a lot of these things are things that like the person doesn't necessarily have to like really give me something. I'm asking for money. I'm asking for all these tangible things, but I still get value from just talking to people. Even if I help people, I try to frame it in a way that like I get benefit, but it doesn't actually cost them anything.
Right. Yeah. Really good. Do you recognize the vibe? I know it's kind of a woo-woo word, but like, do you recognize when the vibe drops? Do you want to create a vibe? Do you feel like any association with that in the FE?
I think I do notice the vibe. I'm not the best at affecting the vibe since I guess it's feminine. Like I'll notice if people say certain things and the mood just drops, or like there's certain like people just have all these different intentions. Sometimes people are passive aggressive and they'll say something like, "Oh, that was a passive aggressive thing." And it's like, what do I do about this?" Sometimes I'll just
Mhm.
relax. Other times I don't, but it's usually more passive. Like I'll lean more toward things that don't require action. Um, and then sometimes you have to think of the context of like, let's say I'm in a group of friends, and someone just got upset about something, and then I don't call it out, but later on I might be like, hey, are you doing okay? Like, do you want to talk about something? And then maybe they'll bring it up, and
Right.
it's super passive, so I might not mention it directly, but they're like, yeah, actually that person just said this. And I was like, oh, and then like I'll try to understand it from that point.
So, like, what is that? You just want to be there for the person? You just want to try to understand them so that they feel better?
It's yeah, like I have my own empty reasons of doing it that gives me
Okay.
dopamine. But you have
What?
to be
Yeah. What is that?
I mean, you can relate to helping people to helping yourself as well. Like they're all connected. So if you can find the connection and then you can figure out since I have TI, I still have my ways of wanting to do things. Like I don't want just FE just to FE. When I FE, it's like deliberate in a sense. I'm FEing in a way that my TI is okay with.
What does that even mean?
Um, like let's say lead TI is like, oh fuck everyone, blah blah blah. Like I just want to do my own thing. Oh, you're talking about this topic that I don't NT like or ST like. Then it's like, okay, sure, I'll be bored sometimes when I'll talk to people. Sure, that's gonna happen. I don't always want to talk about like whatever you want to talk about, like by itself. But then
Right.
I'm like, oh, but it's a useful skill for me to be able to talk about things that I don't want to talk about. And then how much effort do I have to put into it? Well, sometimes just listening is pretty easy. You just sit there, you process what they
Mhm.
say, don't do things to make the situation worse. Like, don't be like, oh, that's stupid. Oh, that's that. Oh, you're just being silly. Oh, get over it. Like, those are bad things. Sometimes just
Okay.
listening and being passive is enough. They
So, okay,
open
so
up.
you found TI reasons to listen and make people feel better, to contribute to them. Your TI is saying, this is going to help me figure, like, get better on myself, work on myself in some
Yep.
way. Right. That's more your TI reasons that you're
Yep.
talking about. Okay. And so then the other aspect of that is actually helping them and giving them value or something like this, right?
Yep.
So what is that about?
That's usually the biggest value I tend to give is I give people emotional space to talk. And
Hmm.
I also feel like if you have NT, like Dave and Shan talk about darkness a lot and how like
Hmm.
people in townsfolk land are just like, oh, everything's nice. And I'm just like, no, life is freaking depressing. You know how much even darkness there is? And
Yeah.
then I feel like if you have NT, like you have a advanced first class ticket to that area initially, just some awareness. So like you're already ahead of them in seeing the stuff. And then what I try to be the person who like can see the darkness, especially if I've gone through darkness myself. And therefore, when someone brings it up, I can adjust them. If it's NF, like if it's N stuff, I can adjust to it because it's
Yeah.
conceptual. I understand. If it's S stuff, S stuff, it's literal-ish. So you can kind of understand S even if you have low S. So like no matter what person comes at me, I can probably adjust to it. I can see their motivations and just be like, okay, you seem like you need this. You seem like you need this.
Hmm. So like, do you get validation from that? Like, you feel like helping people gives you a validation, or like,
Yeah, I try to. I guess I saw kind of see it like if you eat candy, if you eat like one piece of candy every now and then, you can sincerely enjoy the piece of candy. And like it's
mm,
not technically good for you, but you can enjoy it, you can value it. Like you don't have to have like a non-candy life. But if you
right?
overdose on it, then that's when you have problems. So like I don't really like if I rely too much on FE validation, but
Hmm.
like a certain amount, like I let myself enjoy it. That's my TI saying, okay, you're allowed
Interesting.
to enjoy this FE validation, but don't get it to don't like let it go to your head.
Right. Oh, okay. So that's interesting. You don't want to get significance from the connection.
Yeah, at least not too much. Like,
Right.
and there's like different strategies. Sometimes I'll spread it out over multiple people. Like if I help a lot of people, I'll get little bits over time, and therefore like that adds up to enough
Right.
validation for my human
So,
needs.
right. Okay. So then where do you want to get your significance from if it's not from validation? Like, if you don't want to let that get to your head, what do you want to let get to your head?
Um, Making myself better, just getting improving. Like I focus on myself a lot. So
Right.
working on yourself, like comparing myself to where I was before, seeing if I'm better, seeing if I help other people. That's like a skill. So I can frame it as like
Hmm.
a TI skill. Can you help other
Oh.
people? Can you make people feel better? Yes,
So
you've
it's
improved
not
the
actually
skill.
helping people that you want to get like the significance for, but the ability to help people that you want the significance for,
Yeah, well,
like that'll
I'll
contribute to your
do
significance.
both. I'll allow myself to feel it from other people, but it's
Right.
like I need a balanced diet, and that's I can't have like a diet 100% that. It could be 20% of my
Yeah.
diet, it could be 30%.
Yeah. It's health. That sounds really balanced. That sounds like double deciding a little bit. Yeah. That's really good. Um, does Are you looking to get something back, like a quid pro quo with someone when you're helping them out? Like, you're like, okay, further down the road, this person is going to help me, or that's not in your motivation at all. It just ends up happening.
I'm aware of the possibility that when I help people, I might get something in return in the future,
Right.
and it's sort of strategically placed that way. It's sort of like if I invest a lot of sprinkles of my energy into people, I'll get
Yeah.
enough of validation and favors and whatever, like just people grateful to me, and it'll balance my life. And I've improved their lives, so I don't feel bad about it. But I
Right.
don't like try to force it. I don't want to seem like I'm just after you because of this. If it happens
Right.
naturally, that's when I like it the most. That's also
Yeah.
how I choose who I want in my life. The people who see that I'm helping them, and then they realize that, and they're like, "Oh shit, Tony, you do so much for me. Like I should help you back." Then I'm like, "Oh, okay, you're doing this, but I gave you no obligation to do it. I
Right.
want
Yeah.
this situation."
So it's not like something you're after from the get go, but you're aware that it's an outcome.
Yes.
Right. Um, Yeah. Have you seen some of those outcomes every so often? Have you seen that someone, like, every so often, like, you're putting your eggs, your energy eggs in lots of baskets, in lots of different baskets? Are you seeing that, like, some of those are actually hatching every so often?
In little bits, yeah. I'm still growing my web. I
Right.
guess recently, these past year or two, I've been making more internet friends. So I've been having like more calls, and just sometimes I'm more of a mentor role in those cases. But for me,
Uh-huh.
I'm just kind of talking, and you kind of respect what I say. So that's kind of just how it works.
Yeah, it's
Um,
interesting that you called it a web. That's an interesting metaphor for that web. Yeah.
It's just a lot of people that I'm spraying energy to, and I don't know which ones will amount to anything, and I'm not banking
Right.
on any of them.
You're not banking on it. You're not expecting it to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something I've seen with FE is that, like, they'll do that, and like you said, it's not the goal, but it's an outcome of their natural whatever they're doing anyways, that they'll end up getting um, positions in the tribe and stuff because of that, because they're investing so much energy in the tribe. And like, FE is like this energy investment in the tribe. Like, it's just for me, the way I see it, it's like this huge waste of energy. Like, it's a lot of energy that, like, not people don't recognize it. People don't see that you're doing it. Do you feel that too? That people don't even, like, take it for granted a little bit? It seems like it's just like who you
Uh,
are.
I know some people take it for granted, and I just kind of let that be. But one
Yeah.
way to safeguard some return is like in the I can find ways that I gain stuff in each interaction most of the time. So even though there's a long-term potential payouts, there's also the short term. I get at least something from like talking to anyone for a little bit. I learn
Right.
something, I get to grow something, I get feedback, I get something.
Yeah, really cool. Is there anything about your type that you want to talk about? Maybe sleep last a little bit?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised I was sleep last. um, because I thought I was like semi-processed, and I don't really get called out for not being as processed. Like I'll get called out for the EPism of like I'm crazy, random, and trying all these things. But like I feel like I'm more processed than some other people. So I was like, oh, I'm just sleep
Mhm.
last. But then I don't know. The reasoning was like I'm definitely consume play blast. Like I'm definitely using a lot of energy. I can ramp up. Like they said, the biggest thing was like apparently I have like a fast brain and like I can rev up to like being an extrovert with people. And then I thought that was just me. Like I thought I was a super introvert, and I was like, oh yeah, sometimes you have to just extrovert. That's just how it works. Like obviously it's like I need to be able to protect myself from the tribe because I'm INTP who can extrovert. And then I'm like, oh, I guess introverts will actually do this as much. Like I think that's my player energy a lot,
Mhm.
where I'm just like
Yeah.
kind of like, do you need me? Do you need me? Do you need? Do you need me? It's like I can just get like on board pretty quickly, and then sometimes I'll spend hours talking.
So it's interesting that you talk about being processed because, like, I guess the processing that you're usually seeing is that the NETI processing, but like the
Oh,
sleep processing is really that TISI processing. Are you
yeah,
aware of the difference? Like, can you tell me a little bit about what's different between the two?
I think one. So yeah, I've been trying to figure out like what my sleep weaknesses are. One of them is like physically going to sleep, so like me physically getting to bed is one of them, or me
Right.
physically taking breaks. Like I'll just be like, I'm not tired. It's like, dude, take a break. Um, Another
Yeah.
one is like, what do I really want to do? Like when you ask me, how do I figure out of all any ideas what I want to do? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really good at really narrowing down and picking one that like I really
Right.
want to do for the rest of my life.
One. Yeah. One process even. Because like okay, so I guess like your slow cooker thing that you've been developing over time, right? That's like that's a little bit of TISI, right?
Yeah.
Was it hard for you to do that process, the TISI? Was it something you were avoiding doing? Like you
Um,
obviously had to consume before you got to that stage where you were doing that. You're doing
yeah.
it a little bit over time every day, getting it, making little improvements to it.
Yeah, I got to the slow cooker idea after like 10 years. So
Wow. Yeah.
that took a long
Yeah.
time. It's just over time
Yeah.
I see little inefficiencies that I don't like.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's the sleep, like seeing those inefficiencies and processing what's actually happening and improving it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought I was doing that all the time. But I also
Cool.
thought like some people they have spouses and stuff, so they're always like with people. So,
Mhm.
but even if you're extrovert, if you're not actually talking to people, like there's some limit to how much you can really extrovert. So like when I moved out of my house, I was like 22, and I found an apartment, but like I didn't really talk to that many people. I would have a lot of weekends on time by myself, and that's like been a pretty general thing for a lot of my life since then. So it's like I've had a lot of like opportunities to sleep process, but it still feels like a demon
Yeah.
sometimes because sometimes I hate being by myself because I sometimes get all these negative thoughts about the world and systems. So I'm like, oh, this is like really dark. And
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to answer the first part of this. Wow, is that a DI thing? If I help you, you might help me, I think. So no, it's not a DI thing. It's just like it's a way that sometimes people view FE, and I just wanted to diffuse that. It's like people see FE as having ulterior motives for helping people, and that's not at all what it is. I think that's not FE in its true form. But yeah, I like what you said there. That's interesting from the like the DE side. If I help you, you might leave me alone so I can do my own thing. It's like that's why you help people so they can leave you alone. That's interesting.
I mean
I don't view it like that.
that
That's like a TE thing, I guess.
I do that sometimes where I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
if I solve your problem, then I get to rest. Uh,
right.
but I guess usually I feel like I'm a problem solver, so it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I was like consuming, and now you interrupted me because you need something. Oh,
I feel
look
like
at this, I
I
need
feel like
so.
the opposite. Yeah, if I solve your problem, you're going to see me as a good problem solver. You're going to come back to me later and you're going to keep using me as your problem solver. So the
Oh,
best like it's even better for me to not solve your problem, to seem incompetent and then I won't ever have to do this again. You'll leave me alone that way.
I do think of those situations. So like I adjust based on what happens. Like at
Yeah.
work, um, yeah, sometimes there might be someone who like asks me questions, but they ask bad questions. It's pretty much just telling me how to do their job every time. And I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, I was helping you the first time because I'm like, yeah, I would hate to be that guy, especially in the tech field. There's a lot of like assholes who like aren't willing to help anyone. And it's like me just helping people a little bit, showing them some FE compassion is just way better than what other people are doing, even if I'm not the best developer.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, there would be some
Another one
people
here
that
that
will.
related. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going. Sorry.
Like I said,
I thought there was a natural break in your talk, but just keep going.
I guess that's the blast.
Yeah.
I'm doing a bad job at like keeping track of what I was saying. After I get interrupted, that doesn't always happen, but I guess.
Well, you were talking about helping somebody at work, and making
Like,
sure that the first time it's okay, the second time maybe not.
yeah, with the Bassin, I've told people I do this before, but I keep score in my brain of like every time I help someone, and like it's not a score as in like I need you to pay me back. It's more like I like to know where I am in like the exchange balance, and that helps me.
Right.
Like that makes it easier for you to decide: should I help this person again, or should I not? Should I show compassion to some, or should I not?
So okay, so that's really interesting. So this is a TI versus TE thing, right? So okay, so helping people with the emotions and listening to them, like that's a free gift, it sounds like, from you. But like actually doing something and helping them with your TI, that's an investment. That's a personal investment. And that's something that you want the return from. It's like, okay, I gave you this many points. Am I seeing some return on that? And so I'm wondering if FI would be similar to that in the emotional side.
I don't. For the TISI part, like when I help, I'll keep the score, but like I'm even listening is something that I keep score on. So everything is like a score system.
Oh, okay, cool.
So
point system.
but it's a score that I'll use as data, and I hope that it remains as just data. It's like if someone accuses me of never helping them, and I think, no, I helped you all these times. Actually, I think that you don't help me that much, and therefore it's easier for me to like not freak out if they say I'm an asshole, because I'm like, okay, I agree that I'm an asshole, but in this situation, I don't think your conclusion about me is correct. That like I don't help you enough.
Okay, so your type twin came by. He said,
Yep.
"Awesome, Tony." All right. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your type twins? How you see them as similar or different to you? Because that's an interesting experience.
Yeah, we all had a call, a three-way call a few days after I got typed, and it seems like we all have like similar processing speed. So like when we talk, there's like no need for people to really clarify that much. Like any will fill in the dots, the fast brain will fill in the dots. And then I think Prem mentioned like, hey, did you guys just realize we just all channel changed and none of us even noticed? And I was like, oh, I guess we did. It's just like that just happens. Versus like I was listening to like, dude, you guys are jumping from topic to topic, and we're just like, no, we're not. Yeah, they said that I seem like the most ST out of all of them, but I'm also like a few years older than all of them. Yeah, like one time I explained how I fall asleep easily. I have my whole SI system and all the reasons, and they're like, dude, what you just did was like so much ST. I was like, oh really? But like, you should have a system for falling asleep. That's like a real problem. And then I feel like Prem and Alex are more enough.
That's so backwards. That's so weird. A system to fall asleep? Just go sleep. What does that even mean?
Problems.
Wow, that's crazy, dude. I want to know. I want to know now if other who has systems to fall asleep. How does that even? Who does that?
I have all this little SI that I've accumulated over the years of what will help me sleep better or not, and I have masculine sensory, so I'll remember the times when I didn't sleep. I'm like, okay, and then my Annie's like, so why do you think you didn't sleep that well? Oh, was it that? Was it that? Recently, I didn't sleep well yesterday, and I was like, I think the temperature was off. And then so like to test that, I have 2 blankets, and I just put 1 blanket away, and I was like, oh yeah, I fell asleep. And then I was like, oh, maybe my temperature went up because I did some stretching, and like this part got more circulation, therefore I was warmer. I was like, oh, that would make sense. Okay, that's my Annie going.
Okay, so do you feel like this is like highly personalized? It'll only work for you, or could you share your tactics on better sleep? Figuring out how to sleep better.
It's a little bit of both. It's definitely highly customized to me. The way I see like all systems is like you read the SI details, then you abstract it, then you figure out what works for you. Like you try things and you figure out what works for you, and then you develop your own system. You don't have to copy. I have like 50 different little details for my sleep process of how I fall asleep. Like these tiny little things that people are like, that shouldn't matter. And I'm like, no, that matters. Like I don't want to use my phone because the phone will generate light, and that makes me not fall asleep. So I use a watch instead and stuff like that. I have
really cool. Yeah, awesome. Okay, we're way over time now. I just wanted to you got me to put a YouTube channel in the description, but it's not your YouTube channel. It's a friend of yours. It's a teacher, and
Yeah.
she's wanting to use typology for kids.
Yeah.
Right?
So the channel is Typecast Heroes, and it's one of my friends who is typed as an INFJ. She's not like the deepest into OP, but like she's trying to look for people to interview and get her channel better, and it's for like bettering the educational system. So if anyone
Cool.
wants to watch it, like feel free to drop by, send her if you want to get interviewed.
Yeah, it's really good that you're promoting someone else. Good FE there. Really well done. Okay, is there anything you want to leave us with? A final thought? Something on your type that we should all know
Um,
about your deep dark thoughts on cannibalizing animals?
no, Kendrick and me talked about like watching animal videos where they get eaten and stuff in my
Yeah.
interview. Um,
I don't know how that happened. That was interesting. But
you
yeah.
don't want to know what I feel like it's my responsibility to like think about these things. And then if it's socially unacceptable, that makes it even funner sometimes. So
Right.
someone has to do it, guys. It's gonna be us.
Cool, man. So okay, so do you have any final message then, or something about your type?
I thought that was a message.
All right, awesome. That was the message. I don't know what it was, but it was there.
The message is that ENTPs are kind of trolly, and I do relate to the like since we see the social spectrum of NE with FE, but we kind of don't care as much, especially with SI last. Like, oh, that's the tradition. Well, we'll do something about that. Like, someone has to do these wacky little experiments and go against all this. So,
disrupting, yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. But thank you for everyone else for your contributions as well.
I definitely agree. It's an important job to disrupt things, even though, yeah, even though it goes against my NI, the way that NE disrupts things, it's like I do see the value in it. It's really important. So yeah, awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Tony. Really great meeting you. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.